Cam Robinson is the Director of Content and Film Scouting for Elite Prospects. And when we spoke to you last week, my friend, you had some optimism about the Vancouver Canucks and Tom Willander getting together. What's the latest there, bud?
Well, they didn't sign. He did not sign. So I believe my quote was, "I wouldn't be shocked if he was signed."
That's correct.
I remain unshocked that he did not get signed as well. A little disappointed. I think that from what I'm hearing is that the Canucks are just singularly focused on sorting out the head coaching position, right? And fair enough. But at the same time, it's like they could still have this kid in Abbotsford, right? As they enter round 3 of the playoffs. This should have been long done. He didn't make the Worlds. Now he's sitting over there in Sweden. Off-season training. He's going to have to shift gears. He's going to have to shift into that off-season training mode. He can't just sit in limbo forever and you stop playing games. It's like at some point, and that point has probably arrived already, or if not, it's very, very close, that if they did get a deal done to now airlift him into, the meat of a playoff run would be very, very difficult for a young kid like him. So not as optimistic this week as I was last week.
They can walk and chew gum, though, Cam. I'm pretty sure it's not 10 hours a day of coaching search. They can carve out 90 minutes, can't they, to chat with Tom Willander's representative?
You would think. I think at this point, it's like both sides are pretty dug in on where they are, and it's like somebody has to move, right? Whether that's the player or whether that's the organization, somebody has to move in. So that phone call shouldn't take too long. It should just be like, we're ready to do it, come do it. Or, we're ready to do it, come do it, right? It shouldn't. So I guess the discussions are kind of moot at this point. It's that who's going to blink first.
How worth is it to get his career underway for Tom Willander's side? Because the Canucks keep saying, well, he's saying no to a lot of money. Well, he's going to get the money eventually. But to start his career this year versus next, there is an advantage to that. How much do you think that Willander's side values that?
I think it's shrinking by the day. That it was at its peak, the day after the national championship game there, where he could have immediately stepped in and maybe saw some NHL minutes, or just gone right in and would have had himself a dozen games in the AHL already. At this point now, it's shrinking, ever shrinking. So for him to stay in Sweden now and go play for Rögle or wherever he wants is going to be just fine if they can't get an agreement done over the summer, and then he can prepare for what life could be like in the future if he wants to test free agency a year after that too.
Boy, oh boy.
Mm-hmm. Cam, the National Hockey League announced the offer sheet thresholds here today. And if you're willing to buck up and sign a restricted free agent to a offer sheet between $7.02 million and $9.36 million, that will cost you a first, second, a third round pick in the 2026 draft, and you have to own those indigenous picks, your own picks in that draft to make it happen. So now that you know the level of compensation, what do you think about an offer sheet for the Canucks, and specifically on Marco Rossi there in Minnesota, where there's been so much buzz?
Yeah, I mean, to offer sheet him, you're probably looking in that range, so the first, second, and third. It's not cheap. Right? Does it behoove you to go and spend that draft capital and that money on a player like him for $8 million or something like that, or like a JJ Peterka, or do you go in free agency and you try to sign a Nick Ehlers? It doesn't solve your center ice problem, obviously, but replaces the goals that you're going to lose when Brock Besser walks out the door. Or do you try to sign Brock again? Right? Do you circle back to the kid that you brought through? So offer sheets, I think, should be weaponized far more. But I like them in that lower range. I like them in that first and a third, in that second round price tag where you can squeeze a team that's like Edmonton, obviously, right? They went way too bananas in free agency, spent too much money, and then they pigeonholed themselves and they couldn't afford their players that they could use right now.
But this year you're not going to do that to a team because everybody getting the relief this year. This year, I think if you're going to use the offer sheet this year, it's to wildly overpay, isn't it? Yeah. To secure the talent.
Yeah, and that's fine. And a kid like JJ Peterka, who I am a huge fan of, if you want to go out and give him $9 million and force Buffalo to make a decision, be like, this is like a cornerstone piece for us, or you steal that very young, talented player, then yes. And like I said, I think it should be weaponized in all sorts of different ways. And you're right, this year, with that relief that everybody's getting, that little cushion, it's going to be hard to squeeze anybody. So personally, I'd probably stay away from it if I was Vancouver, and I'd look more at, if you want a Marco Rossi, go and trade for him, right? So now you're looking at your first round pick and probably a Tom Willander or a Lekkerimäki. And then if it is Willander, maybe you're trying to get a guy like David Spacek back, right? So a 22-year-old, a right shot defenseman, he's over there at the World Championships right now. His dad just came out and said, like, a big reason he's over here is to get out of Minnesota. He doesn't have a future in Minnesota, that it's blocked in front of him. So this kid will play games, and now you have a little bit of a replacement for that right side that you're emptying with Tom Willander out the door. The value isn't too bad in a situation like that. You get yourself a second-line center, you get yourself a D prospect, you trade your first-round pick, you trade your top D prospect.
Is Spacek a Mancini-level prospect? Is that fair to say? Different game, but same level?
Sure, I could say that. I think Mancini's been developing pretty quickly, and he has that size, which is so impressive. Spacek, just about, a 6-footer. But yeah, similar type of realistic upside of odds of playing. I do think both will play games. Consistently play games. Maybe it's 400, maybe it's 600, whatever. But I think they'll have careers. We'll just have to see how high. I think Mancini might have a higher ceiling, pure ceiling.
Yeah, David Spacek, the son of Yaroslav Spacek, former National Hockey Leaguer. David was actually born in Columbus when his dad was playing there, a fifth-round pick from the Sherbrooke Phoenix of the Q in 2022. He's played the last 2 years with the Iowa AHL Farm Club of the Wild. 31 points in 72 games this past year, a 6-foot, 190-pound, 22-year-old right shot defenseman. And just tidying up, Cam says he's more interested in that offer sheet in the first and third round compensation. That's a $4.68 million offer sheet up to a 7.02.
The Philip Broberg.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But as you guys mentioned, harder to execute this year with everybody gaining cap space. Cam, we've talked a lot about Manny Malhotra as Canucks coaching candidate. Marco Sturm's name has come to the fore since we last talked to you. What do you make of Marco Sturm as a potential Canucks coach?
I've been asking around. He's a good coach, and he's well respected. People I talk to, they think he's not long for holding down an AHL job. That he should be in the NHL soon. It's interesting to see what's going to happen in LA. Obviously, he's the Ontario Reign coach right now. Do they make a change on their bench too with the new GM coming in? He has connections with Boston. Part of that Joe Thornton trade 100 years ago. He's been a head coach in the AHL for 3 or 4 years, assistant coach in the AHL for 3 or 4 years. So he has that international experience as well. Nearly won a gold for the Germans there. The Olympics, got the silver medal too. So he's had success at the AHL level. It's very similar to Manny. Is 7 years as an assistant coach in the NHL, just the one head coaching gig in the AHL, but found success. I keep coming back to this, though, is that Mitch Love is the one that people come back to again, is that he should be at the top of a bunch of teams' lists for a non-retread, for a first-time head coach in the NHL, that Mitch Love really does get heaped praise on. So I know right now we're talking about Marco Sturm, and I do think he's a viable candidate, excuse me, in Vancouver, as is Manny, but I do think we should keep an eye on Mitch Love. Obviously, he's in the playoffs right now, so no one's talking to him yet. But down 3-1, that might change soon.
All in the same category of coach, though, right? I mean, there's so much for the perennial Jack Adams candidates. The Canucks are going to try to unearth somebody here, it appears.
It does appear to be that way, and we've talked about it. It's going to save them money. It's going to save them term, and it does often. With some of these younger guys, it breeds new life, right? You get new ideas. You have people. When I talk about Manny, like everybody, his preparation is second to none. His ability to communicate with the players. Guy. I am, right? Yeah, you want to prove that you can handle this, and that because oftentimes you get that one shot, and if it doesn't go too well, you're cast off. You're back to the assistant coaching job or back in the AHL.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see. What do you think the timeline is for them to pull this off? If they're doing live interviews in the next 10 days, are we looking by the end of the month for sure the Canucks have got a head coach?
Gosh, you'd think that they would love to have this done by the Combine, right? Which is running the 3rd to the 7th or the 4th to the 7th. You'd think that they would want to get this done sooner rather than later, because you got other ducks that you need to get in a row. This is a big couple of months coming up here for your team. If you're going to make a big splash at the draft, free agency, everybody goes to the cottage after that. So let's get that head coaching job sealed up.
You mentioned re-signing Brock Besser, Cam, and since we last spoke to you, the AFP projection is in for Besser's contract, a 6-year deal at just about $8.5 million per season. How does that strike you?
It sounds about right. Wouldn't surprise me if he got more than that on a 6-year deal in free agency too. I know that people are going to look at him and they've watched him closely in Vancouver, and he's not a play driver, but he is a guy who has 40 goals on his resume. He consistently puts up 25, knows how to play with good players. Well-liked, very well-liked. I do think that he's going to get some nice offers, but, for Vancouver, it's like, I've come back to it again, is where are you going to replace those goals? How are you going to replace the person in the room as well, too? It's a tall ask. You're going to go out and you're going to compete against 5 or 6 teams or 8 teams for Nick Ehlers. Is that really going to be worth it for you? Are you going to spend more of your draft capital or your younger assets to trade and go get those players? Are you going to spend all your money on Sam Bennett, who doesn't score at the same level, but brings some other intangibles? Nothing's a great fit for you. It would have been great if you just got Brock done earlier. Maybe they could have found common ground sooner in the season. It wouldn't cost as much. Once he starts hearing offers, everything's going to probably ratchet up. So if it's 8.5 by 6, I don't think Canucks fans should be too upset about that if that was the deal he signed in Vancouver, because I think you're going to pay more for potentially less if you go the free agent route too.
Again, it's not the first couple of years I'm worried about with that contract. Yeah. He can score that. It's anything past year 3, really, right?
6 years is you mitigate a little bit of that though. You mitigate. It's not an 8-year deal. It's not an 8-year deal. So, but I do hear you, but that's what you're getting in free agency too, right? I know if you go and give Nick Ehlers a 7 or 8-year deal, 7-year deal, I should say, as a free agent, he's got the speed, but is that going to age all that gracefully either, right? It's everybody's looking at it too. When you're that age, you don't really want to pay these guys at 33, 34, 35, but that's the name of the game in free agency.
What about Suter at 4 by 4.5 million, Cam?
It's not cheap. It's not cheap. I'm always scared of paying guys after career years, and he had a great year for Vancouver. He's played a bunch of different roles for them. He can fit on the wing, he can fit in the middle, but I don't know. That seems like one of those deals that you end up being like, darn it, we overbid on this one.
Do you feel like they have to focus on somebody that is got the track record of performing? Great that he had a fabulous season too in Suter, but do you need somebody with a longer track record if you're going to invest multi-millions here?
Yeah, that's what I would prefer, or at least if you're gonna give him multi-millions, the term, right? Is that give him 4.5 for next year? He earned it, sure, great, and let's see what happens. But obviously, he's not going to sign that contract. So yes, I would like to see someone with a bigger track record.
But I think there's also a world though where 4.5 over 4 years ages just fine. If Pius Suter is a 50-point player for all the 4 of those years, you're doing just fine with that.
Absolutely. That's the question, though. Is he a 20, 25 goal scorer, 50-point guy, right? Is that he hasn't proved that he is that other than this year. And that's where the question is. You're right. It's a gamble. It might turn out right. And there's also a world where 4.5 doesn't get it done. That he could go to free agency and get 5, right?
100%.
This is where it's silly season, right? It is the silly season.
Lastly, Cam, you said the combine was when?
So I'm going to be there from the 3rd to the 7th. I think technically it opens up on June 1st, but yeah, everybody gets into town on the 1st, and then they start doing all their things. Yeah.
He's going to miss Snoop Dogg at BC Place.
Oh, too bad.
I've seen him before. Seen him live. I think it was Pemberton outdoors. It was a good time. Yeah.
Oh, really?
He doesn't remember that, by the way.
Yeah.
Neither do I.
Snoop Dogg.
Great stuff, buddy. Thank you for this. Catch up next week.
Okay, appreciate it, boys.